to take a look at today is our super awesome brand new laser cutter. So this is an Orion something or other K40, essentially one of the super inexpensive Chinese knockoffs. And we've been having a lot of fun with it. I think that last time we looked at some of the work that we've been doing to create exciting new terrain. And I don't know how much of an update we've got on that. Pat, our terrain guy, is in the middle of a bunch of school stuff, and so he has not been in recently to continue making progress on that. But I'll show you guys what we do have here. Unless, of course, my computer decides it can't handle all of this. So a few more deconstructed houses and piles of deconstructed melamine board, melamine. Anyway, yeah, and a whole bunch of blanks that are eventually going to become more and more houses. So the goal is to actually have enough castles and houses and villages to be able to field an entire, all 4 of our tables full of medieval style terrain. So what we're going to do today is we're going to play around with this program called K40 that lets us laser engrave, and Inkscape that lets us design files to be engraved. And I bet you guys can't guess. If you're a Magic player, you should know. We're working on some cool tokens. So we've got a whole bunch of different designs I've been working on today. And I think that what we're going to do is we're going to actually take a look at, let's see here. Let's go ahead, save this as before I make mistakes. So we're going to finish playing around with this and make this into a printable file and take a look at it printing. So there we go. Now we're working with a file that we can do whatever we want with. So let's go ahead, and I think what we're going to do, so we've got all these different designs. If you have an opinion on what kind of design we should be using, definitely let me know, because I don't have the slightest clue which of these designs actually is going to look good. So we're just going to clean this all up and drop a whole bunch of these into a single blank on our laser printer and see what they actually look like when we get done. And maybe it'll be super sweet, and maybe it'll be super garbage. Uh-oh, looks like I don't have the font I was using for this. That's fine, this is just a prototype. But yeah, I think that especially with us trying to do a couple of our pre-releases on Discord, for scale size, this guy right here is super teeny tiny first strike token, and we're at 140% zoomed in, so there's 100%. That tiny little first strike token right there, that is approximately the size of the ones that Wizards of the Coast is including in the booster packs. Right down to the text should be approximately the same number of pixels. For anybody who's actually interested in the whole laser cutting side of things, how K40 Whisper interprets your design is black is raster engraved, and what that means is it's going to go line by line and try to fill in everything. And if there's like multiple colors, it'll pull it in grayscale, and it can actually dither, so it'll do like half bursts of power and try to fill that in at grayscale, which turns out not half bad. And then blue is a vector cut, so rather than going across and doing every single thing across the x-axis, and then doing every single thing one tiny dot up and then across the x-axis, with the vector, it does a exact match to that path. And then red is vector cut, so you can actually see on the K40 instructions, we've got raster engrave, vector engrave, and vector cut. And you can set different speeds because you're going to want to go slower on your cuts so that you've got more time for your laser to burn through the material. We're actually going to crank that down even further to 3 millimeters per second. But on raster, you can really get cooking with that and go all the way up to 350. All right, so we're just going to position these guys and change a couple of colors on our Inkscape file so that we can just take it over to print. So, as I was saying before I got off on that tangent, this is about the size of what you're going to have on the punch outs in the back of the pack. And we're like, hey, if you're playing on Discord, maybe it should be significantly larger so that we can all read what's going on our opponent's board. But there's a lot of ways, it turns out, to make something significantly larger. So like we could go horizontal and do like these bar tokens. It'll cover up more of your card art, but these 3 here from hexproof through first strike are actually going to cover up just the art of the card, just to give you guys a little bit of a sense of scale here if you're familiar with Magic. And then we're going to turn our outlines red here so that they'll be cut instead of, you know, just engraved, because that would be awful if we couldn't actually use the pieces that we got. And then same with these 3, should be that same approximate size here. But yeah, some people, myself included, really enjoy the art of Magic and recognize our cards by the art. So we thought that we would try doing the circle ones, like this first strike dude over here. But when I did it entirely as a circle, whoop, come back here. I want all of you to come with me. There were definitely some issues in terms of text being legible. We're actually going to have to shrink this again due to that font change, I think. Move that spear in from the engraved edge. Text being legible when it's all in a circle, so we tried doing this little box underneath, and then I hand traced these wonky gears before I realized I can just go find really cool gears online that are free SVGs, public domain, so we're not stepping on anyone's toes. And then I realized that, you know, when we do this weird dumbbell, barbell looking one, kind of run into the problem of, well, what do you put over in the other one? We could just put another spear. We could, you know, I actually don't need these gears. I don't know why I left them on. Or we could put a GG for game grid, and we could also do that on the back of all of the tokens, right? There's a lot of different things we can do. Then I don't think we need, well, we probably want like at least 2 test copies of this first strike dude, right? So that way we can see what it looks like to stack multiple on a card. So if we know anything about Ikoria so far, we know that Ikoria is going to be giving our creatures a lot of counters. Then one other thing that was kind of disappointing is that the more intricate the design on the end of our ability counter, the less space that we had for the icon. And so this one was probably one of the better compromises. My personal favorite, I really liked just like the sharp angles of this kind of key shape. My wife really liked the softer angles here. And then I took it a step too far, made these awful designs that are just like, is that a circle? Maybe it's like a potions flask, who knows? Where do we want to position these guys? I have no idea about laser cutter optimization, so I literally taught myself everything that I know about these silly programs and laser cutting yesterday morning. And so that's been a fun adventure. Made some fun stuff for Mother's Day. There we go. Alright, so we got a fun little sampling of everything. And I'm sure if you're still watching this stream, all that you want to do is you want to see how many. We want to see this laser cutter in action, right? Like, I think that's what I would want to do if I'm this far into the stream and I still haven't seen any lasers cut anything. So let's go ahead and save this guy. We've already got this as a choreo for stream. Let's just save as a second time. Test print 1. Because all that I want to do is be able to find my files later when I print them. All right, and then what we're going to do is open that up in K40. So this initialize laser cutter button, I actually already did this, so I'm not going to do it right now. But what that does is make sure that you've got communication with it, and then we're going to open up our design file. Okay, I'm sorry, Roy. I'll try to get to the printing. We open up the design file. And because I don't know what I named it or where I put it, quick access, you have failed me. All right, I think it should be in laser cut. Oh, that's why I want design files. There we go. All right, test print number 1. So it's going to pull it in here and do a little bit of math to figure out how to communicate that. Oh, I did forget a massively important step. So, thank goodness for warnings. What we've got to do, I'll switch back over to Inkscape so I can show you guys. Actually, does it pull up dialog boxes on the stream? I don't think it does. So I apologize. I'm just going to do this real quick. You have to resize the page to the drawing that you've currently got. So that way it doesn't try to cut things that don't exist, and it makes it so that there's, oh, that's why K40 was freaking out. I've got doodads. Actually, I did kind of want to see this one. Glad it found it for me. I've got doodads chilling clear off in, I don't even know how many millimeters we were away from the original, and then this text that I was trying to wrap around it. All right. So now, let's just go ahead and resize the document to just these guys that we actually want to see printed. And hey, that looks a lot better. We're no longer off in Timbuktu or who knows where. All right. So we'll save that again. And then let's reopen that in Whisperer. All right. Hey, that's looking quite a bit more like what we expected. Anyway, so we initialize, we click the unlock rail button, and that actually lets me move the laser head because being the cheap Chinese knockoff that it is, it's lined up to engrave right into your air exhaust vent when you first initialize. And so not only did I manually move it by unlocking the rail, I also am going to move this down and off from both of the edges of our place. And then vector cutting can actually cause things to catch on fire, which creates nasty burn marks, and I prefer to etch over those burn marks. So even though it's really slow and boring, you know what? Let's try kicking it up a notch. We'll try this at 10 and see if it cuts all the way through the board. Anyway, so we're going to try a vector cut real quick and see what that looks like. And I'm going to mute my mic and reply to anybody who's chatting with me. So compiling the data, getting it kicked over via USB of the paths that it'll have to. Oh, it's already started cutting. All right, let's swap over and get the close-up of that. Man, who knew that 10 millimeters was so much faster than 3 millimeters per second when you're doing those cuts? Holy cow, you can already just see how ridiculously small that first one is going to turn out. The little, I think it's a ½ inch? No, that one's a full inch? Let me check. I'm going to go check the measurements in Inkscape while this is running because I'm very curious. Let's see here. Yeah, so that's our little ½ inch one. and then the larger of the two is a full inch. But since that's like the diameter of the gear, it's a pretty substantial difference, right? Because every single side is extending. I'm glad you think it's cool. I really think it's cool too. By the way, if anybody watching knows anyone in the HVAC community, or anyone who has an inline duct fan, the anemic air exhaust is not really doing justice to the fumes that are being put out by this. Luckily, I don't think there's anything toxic about cutting up some particle board, and there's nobody in the building because we're under semi-isolation lockdown still. So I haven't been too concerned about it, but I think getting a nice powerful fan to go inline on the duct and just suck that air out would A, help with some of the smoke, and B, those fumes would be much less likely to spread towards the front of the store. Ooh, nice round key coming in there. Alright, so for anybody watching, whether you want to jump on the Twitch chat or on the Discord chat, wherever you want to get in touch with me, if you are not a Magic player, which you may very well not be, since this is normally a board game night, or even if you are a Magic player, I was wondering what other doodads should we start cutting up? So if you've got any opinions, you're like, oh man, I would really love to have some wooden tokens, or we can cut acrylic, waiting for the fan because I've cut acrylic twice now and the fumes are just absolutely noxious there. But yeah, anything where you're like a solid token would be infinitely better than the garbage cardboard that came with it, or whatever components you want to replace. Like, what was I thinking about? Like, even just, well, this would be a ton of cuts, but, you know, we played Zombicide the other night, and I've got a Kickstarter edition, so I've got, like, all the plastic exit tokens and noise tokens and all that, and there's just something nice and solid, right? And so I was thinking, you know, for the demo copies in the store, we could laser cut out some wooden or acrylic tokens for use in those games. Another option, and this one requires a far more analytical and savvy mind than I have, but you know, we can definitely start doing inserts. Oh, it's already done cutting. Ooh. All right, gonna put you guys on mute for a second, and I'm gonna go open up the lid so that we can take a look at it, but I'm not gonna actually move it because I don't think I can get it back on center. I'll be right back. So it's kind of hard to tell if they actually cut all the way through with it being without moving it. But again, I don't trust myself to recenter it. So what we're going to do, pop back over here to K40. We can always do another vector cut and apply some paint or sand in order to get those smoke stains off, fire stains, the burning. But the next step is we're going to go ahead and click this vector engrave button, and then at the end, if we need to do another vector cut, we'll do that. So vector engrave, then raster engrave, and let's take a look at what that looks like. Oh, that's the wrong button. Man, now it's really cooking. That 20 millimeters per second compared to 10. And then, you know, the crazy thing is, especially with all the flames and smoke that are coming out, this is at 25% power. You're supposed to use lower power to try to prevent the flames, but guess that's not going to work. That was even quicker. Had very few elements that needed to be laser engraved, or vector engraved. So now, last step, we'll do the raster engrave, and this one is going to be booking 350 millimeters per second, but has to go and travel the entire length of the board in order to do raster. So it'll be interesting to see. And there's a lot more. All of the text, all of the icons are all raster. So let's see here. Just booking back and forth. You can see that little blink of a light. Is it trying to leave its mark? Maybe. So I haven't done 25% power at this speed on the white-backed melamine board. Leave the burn marks to look good and give it character. That's fair. It is. Gives it that Jordan made this not a professional kind of touch. And that's something that's valuable someday, maybe when I'm rich and famous. You guys can be like, see, this is an OG Jordan. You can tell because of how awful it is. Anyway, I've done the 350 travel speed and the 25% power on the back of the melamine board and on a couple of different things of plywood. And Shining Develop says you're not already. Well, I guess I'm semi-famous, in the circles that we run in. But you definitely do not start a game store to get rich. Oh man, maybe if I'd bought more Black Lotuses when I had the chance. Silly student loans seeming so important compared to buying Power 9 when they were affordable. Anyway, yeah, so I've done this speed on plywood without that melamine white cover over the top. So it does look like it's coming through pretty well, as we've been talking. More of the details are coming in there, and so it might turn out. One thing, not to interrupt our viewing of, this is like almost the opposite of watching paint dry, but just a really quick hop over here into Inkscape. I am very, very curious to see if our menacing goblin's face details actually come through as we're printing. I 100% doubt that that's going to happen. Just because of the scale. Like when we were looking at it just barely on Inkscape, that was zoomed in 1600%. So I highly doubt that maybe it will be there. It is laser printers are pretty pinpoint accurate, high detail devices, but you just won't be able to see it. Question from chat with Shining Develop is, what model is this? This is our beautiful K40 Chinese knockoff, Orion something. And let me see, I'll go hop over here on another tab into my Amazon purchase history. It's essentially, if you can find a printer for under $500, you're getting something very, very similar to what we're using today. And you are always taking a giant crapshoot on whether or not it will actually work. So we got very lucky. There's nothing broken, right? Like some of these do actually ship with the tube in the back that emits the laser shattered. So we got lucky that none of the components are actually broken. And then B, Pat, our awesome Warhammer train guy, spent, I think it was like 2 solid days just tweaking the mirrors and getting everything lined up. All the work that I'm absolutely terrible at in order to make sure that it would work. But now that it's up and running, it should be functional for somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 hours of printing. So even if we print for 8 hours a day, we're looking at 125 days of use before we have to replace the laser tube. And we don't usually print for 8 hours a day, and we don't print every day. So hopefully it'll last us a year or so. And then the tubes are only like $100. And once you have a functional printer, then replacing the tube is a lot easier than anything else. Or cutter, not printer. R. Wilco is asking, are you going to be selling these in stores? This just for fun. So we're actually looking at throwing these on as a bonus for the pre-release. So that way especially for people playing in the Discord pre-release, maybe as a bonus incentive for joining that one, or for people planning on playing in the Discord Ikoria Sealed League that starts after the pre-release. Throwing in some of these tokens for free, so that way you can use them to indicate what abilities you've given your creatures, because if you don't know what abilities they have on camera, it's going to be a very messy game. And then in terms of selling them, kind of depends on whether or not we choose to use Wizards official arena icons or not. So all of these test ones don't have Wizards icons. Generally speaking, they're pretty okay with us using their intellectual property for giveaways that are going to benefit our players and communities. Aside from posters, like direct artwork, but things that are just their vector files or whatnot, they don't seem to care if you're not selling things that they've developed. But I didn't know if like giving them away with pre-release would cross a line, so that's why all these demo ones, sample ones, have just random public domain vectors that I could find that seemed to kind of represent the ability. And so I don't know. Yeah, maybe for sale, maybe not, I guess is the super long answer. But if you join the pre-release, then definitely for free, assuming that I can make enough of them over the next 5 days. Shining Develop, have you thought about a renting type system? So, once we're using it for customer projects, there definitely has to be some kind of monetization involved, just to A, replace the materials that are used, and B, replace that laser tube at some point, let alone any other parts that will eventually malfunction due to wear and tear. Like if you get a year per tube, how many tubes before the whole printer goes kaput and you're just out another $400? And so maybe a rental type system. The only issue I have with renting is that involves having somebody else use it, and then you're assuming like liability in terms of if it lights on fire or burns their eye out or whatever other things. Not that you would do that, right? But the average person is not to be trusted with lasers. And so maybe like on a, hey, give us your file and we will do our best to print it type basis, but probably not on a, yeah, come on in and plug your computer into this machine and print for an hour or two or however long you want, right? One of the big things that I wanted to start looking into, especially as we like start to have game nights in store again, and we talked about this with the Wednesday night game group a few times, was printing off promotional items, right? So like maybe we have, a Blood Rage night or a Gloomhaven night or something like that, and whoever wins gets a box insert that we've laser cut out here. And right, because like now that we own the laser, and again, like, so we're gonna have this done within our hour-long stream, right? So let's say that it takes me, let's say it's $100 to replace the tube, and we're getting 1,000 hours out of it. And this would be maybe 1/10 of a box insert. So take 10 hours, and an hour costs us 10 cents. So it costs us $1 of laser tube in order to print that box insert. And the melamine board is $15 for a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet. Right? So like it's kind of insane how much you can get done for maybe $2 or $3. But from Broken Token, a high quality box insert is like $60. It's as much as the board game sometimes. And so having them as a sweet giveaway is like that really high value add. And like I'm sorry, to be clear, I am not faulting Broken Token for the prices they charge. They've got who knows how many hours into design and development to make sure that it fits perfectly 100% of the time, and that it'll fit sleeves and expansions, and they use much higher quality wood than the melamine board, right? Like there's a lot that goes into a $60 product. So more power to Broken Token. They are a great company that makes cool stuff. But in terms of a giveaway, right? Like we can do it pretty inexpensively, and it will still hold your game components better than the cardboard box the game came in. So I think that we could do some pretty cool stuff there. And then like with Alpine Gaming Con and other events that we like to run. just having a bunch of sweet giveaways for our volunteers would be really cool. So, at the end of all this long rambling answer, shining. One last thing. One of the things that we'd kind of tossed around as an idea was for anybody who designs their own file, if they give us the rights to print it to use as a giveaway for a future event, we would let them print X number of copies for free as a thanks for the file kind of a thing. And so, yeah, I think that would be kind of a cool way to incentivize, especially like we talked about doing it with some of our younger high school aged Magic players and board gamers, to kind of encourage and incentivize them to start developing these skills. And then they get to take home like that physical prototype of something they developed, and we get to have sweet digital files that we can use for the future. All right, so I'm gonna go crack open that lid, and then I don't know, I'm gonna poke it and see if we cut all the way through before I move it, because we might be running one more cut to see if we can get those things to pop out without me taking a knife to it. I'll be right back. Well, as you may or may not have been able to see, that was definitely not cut through, and it may very well not be in the same place as it was before. So, there we go. And now you can read the words too. Didn't realize that was backwards until now. So I guess what we'll do is we're going to pop back over here to K40, and I think, unfortunately, this is going to take a while, but we're going to go back down to that 3 millimeters per second vector cut so that we just guarantee that we get through it. And it might be a little bit off, so it might cut into some of the details and raster engravings that we've done, just because I jostled it when I tried to poke the token out. Not pause, stop. We're not doing anything. We're going to vector cut. So I guess we'll see how far off I made it. But either way, like even if some of the edges are burned out, this cut will be the size of the final product. And so we'll be able to take a look at it on top of a card and see what it's going to look like in person when we play with it over Discord, or hopefully at real in-person events soon. Man, that is a deep, dark cut right there. Wonder if digitally zooming in this will actually help at all. Or maybe it will just like freeze out OBS. OBS has been really struggling today. And I don't know why. I mean, it is using like 5 gigs of memory right now. Why is it using 5 gigs of memory? Anyway, yeah, let's see if we can digitally zoom in here. OBS is like, what do you mean, why am I using 5 gigs of memory? You've got 3 different cameras, 2 different mics running, all of your silly logos loaded up. Of course we're going to use every single megabyte you'll give me. Whew. Alright, well, this is going to take a hot minute. So, Shining Dev, any of our fresh viewers, one of the requests I had was, what else would you like us to print? We've got like 20 more minutes before we start up our employee meeting, so I can definitely, we can whip something up real quick and maybe get it printed while this is finishing off its cut, if anybody has any requests. Or Roy, I guess he doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be not magic related. All right. Man, that is just burning through that. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I put guides on the board so that I could put it back down in the same place every single time. We can do the cuts from the back. I'll have to take a look at the other side of the board and see, right? Because a lot of the charring effect comes from the fact that that exhaust pulls the flame towards the vent. So this triangle vent at the back of the laser behind the rail that the laser's on is the exhaust fan that pulls the fumes and smoke back out there, right? And so that's why all of your charring is going up from there. So I bet you that there's nothing to hardly nothing on the adverse side. So it'd be interesting to see, yeah, if we had a better guide system so that it was accurately cut from the back, then Roy could still have a super cool chart effect on the back that lets him know it's an authentic Jordan Bird original. But we could also have a little bit more professional grade front surface. Trying to think of games that I've played recently. I played way too many Kickstarter games. I can't think of a game that I've played recently that had cardboard components that I would really prefer them to not be cardboard. You can see on those long straight pieces there how the charring effect is just potentially going to entirely obscure the text and image. I wonder what causes more charring, right? Because the other option we had was to leave it at that 10 millimeters per second, or even potentially go a little bit faster, but kick the power up, right, to 85, 95, 100%. The power percentage of your laser is a lot of what determines whether you get the 1,000 or the 1,500 hours out of it. So that's why I prefer to try to keep it at the 25% when possible. But yeah, for something like this, right, where we can go literally 3 or 4 times faster. 3 or 4 times faster. I don't know why my voice kicked down. Anyway, so for something where we can go 3 or 4 times faster by just tripling the power, if we could get up to 12 millimeters per second and get a nice clean cut, then the human time savings compared to the laser hour savings, or laser hour cost, is definitely worthwhile. All right, Mr. R.B. Pajaro, with your design background and pedigree, I'm going to flip on over to Inkscape here so we can take a look at the file. And I wanted to get your opinion on which of these messes is the best option. Like, yeah, a lot of what we're doing tonight is getting physical copies of them, right, so that we can actually see what they'll look like. And I'll pop this up for anybody who is primarily interested in watching the laser burn things. Let's see if we can expand that out. Oh, yeah. Sorry, we covered that super early in the thing. So Inkscape is a freeware. And then K40 Whisperer is the software that actually communicates with the laser printer. And then RB Praharo, to answer your question, these are the Ikoria tokens. So that first strike token in, I think I might have actually mismeasured, but the first strike token in the top left gear one over here compared to this guy here are roughly right between these two is the size of the punch out cardboard ones. that are going to be at the back of the Ikoria booster packs. And then kind of the thought that Skylar and I were talking about was, initially it was, circles can be really hard to stack multiples of. So how do we elongate it and then get the words to be larger? And these aren't, final fonts or images by any means, right? Just kind of some proof of concept things. And then I really liked this key design. Gave me a little bit more space for the icon compared to, just a single bar or box design. And then Brielle wanted it a little bit more rounded, and I really like how it looks through here. I'm not a huge fan of how it attaches here, but you're not going to poke somebody's eye out, which apparently I'm super concerned with, lasers in eyes, tokens in eyes, anything with an edge. It's almost like I have a 6-month-old that sticks everything she grabs somewhere near her face. But yeah, so we got the pokey one, and then after I did the semi-rounded ones that are over here on the right, I was like, well, what if we made them really round? And I did these guys that kind of look like an alchemist's flask. And I was like, oh, we could go more thematic after I had that thought. So I drew up this gear. That's why it looks so unbelievably wonky. And then I was like, I bet you Google has better ones. In terms of borrowing and using the icons from Arena, I just need to call the WotC rep and make sure that we've got the okay to do that. Generally speaking, they're okay if you're not selling their stuff, but in our experience with the posters that we print, they don't want us even giving away their IP. They only want it used for in-store purposes. And I want to be able to give these away with the Ikoria pre-release kits. So that's why they're not currently using the Arena icons. But if we get WotC's go ahead, Wizards of the Coast, sorry for anyone unfamiliar with the acronym. If we get Wizards of the Coast go ahead, we will use the Arena icons on them. Anyway, but yeah, and then once I got on the gear idea, I designed the 2 that are in the top left as those last 2 gear options. Well, first I did the one over here that's just the gear without a box underneath it. And I thought, I don't know, like I couldn't get the text to display exactly the way that I wanted it to. And there's definitely a better way to display it than the way that I currently am. And then I thought, okay, I'll just drop the text into one of these boxes here. So that's the evolution of the ideas so far. And then, no staff to play games with tonight. So I thought what we'll do is we'll talk about the laser cutter and this on Twitch. And yeah, I think that's... There we go. There's the infinitely long explanation. I think we're almost done cutting. That's super exciting. Just real quick to show you guys. There's what's going to be in the Wizards ones. I don't think this image is to scale. Oh, it might be. I don't know if Inkscape has a measuring tool. It's got a color picker. Oh, there's the measuring tool. Okay. So if this is the size of a Magic card, then this should be 3.5 inches. 90 millimeters. Units. I want you in inches. 3.61. Okay. So these are a little bit larger than they will end up being. Let's see here. But just barely larger, and they're roughly 1 inch. And this is roughly 1 inch, so they will actually be about the size of this larger of the 2 gear tokens. Nice. That's a lot more usable. Does it generate much heat? Yeah, I think that it might be a little bit hot. just in case anybody else missed it, K40 Whisperer is the laser cutter driver, and Inkscape is the open source version of Illustrator. Alright, outside the box and case, no, not that I can tell. Like, I can go grab the lid right now. And speaking of which, it's done printing. So I'm going to take off my headset, run over here, and let's take a closer look at the final product here and see if going 3 times slower actually cut all the way through. All right, guys, I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Yeah, they definitely just pop right out now. So we definitely, those long straight, I didn't set up the lighting. I did not think this all the way through. But those long straight cuts just got charred to no end. Wondering, maybe we'll use the camera I was using to take a look at the other things we've cut. Hey, there we go. A little bit better lighting. So here's our smallest one. You know, I think that text is like right on the edge of being legible. Oh yeah, he saw it there for the briefest of seconds. And then this larger one that's on the scale of the Cardboard Wizards tokens. Kind of that same thing, where that longer cut did put some more char on our burger than I might like. I'm gonna go grab a magic card so we can see these guys on some magic cards. Oh, let's not lose my oh no! I'm losing all my pieces. So I'll be right back with the magic card. Yeah, I think this one looks pretty solid. I was a big fan of this vector scary goblin that came out. And again, I think the offness on the cut is just from me jostling it, so he would have been more centered if I hadn't checked it halfway through. Then he has definitely not got his forehead wrinkles though. So kind of the thought was, if you've got a lot of abilities going on, right, you could just stack them up and they'd fit within the boundary of the art box so you don't cover any important information, and then you could fit up to 3 of them without going into your text box. And then we thought about, where did that last one go? Making them double-sided, right? So that way you could alternate if you needed to. Right, like if you're, let's see here. But yeah, so you could just keep stacking these guys all together. And then there we go. That's kind of essentially the idea. So with the larger ones, like what Wizards is using, which is roughly, again, about the same size as either of these guys here, probably about the same as this. You can only really fit maybe 3. Maybe you can get 3 on there before you run into problems covering up important information. But your words are quite a bit smaller, and so for people playing on Discord for our Corey at Home pre-release, getting larger words like these guys. So This one right here, even though it's much smaller than the Wizards one, this is the same font size as what's on the cardboard tokens that you'll punch out. If I'm remembering right. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so I'll pop over to that view and show you guys real quick what we're talking about. So that menace right there. If we take our handy dandy ruler and zoom all the way in, so this guy is 0.08 inches. And then on any of our, like I think this one was 0.03 inches. And this one is 0.12, so about 50% larger. And then over here, these guys, about 0.12 as well. So we're able to fit pretty large ones anywhere. Was it? Let's pop over here and take a look. Maybe, yeah, this one not only, so I think it might still be the same font size, but we definitely have the space. So he is actually 0.14-ish. .13, 0.14 already. But there's a lot more space left over in that box than there is in this box over here. So the idea was to make them large enough to use when you're on camera, when you're on Discord talking to people and playing over camera. Anyway, yeah, if you guys have any other thoughts, comments, anything else you'd like to see developed, let me know. But we are down to our last couple of minutes, so I'm probably just going to pop off. And I will see you guys on Discord and at the pre-release online. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the counters. See ya.